Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Our Home Ground. I'm so thankful that you keep coming back to listen because I'm having so much fun doing this. I'm really, really passionate about women's soccer, and so this just gives me a platform to talk about it. So it's very exciting. On today's episode of the podcast, we have my dear friend Meg, who joined me all the way from Australia. I am so thankful that we were able to make it work with the crazy time zone situation that we have. But Meg is somebody who, from the very beginning, I was having these really interesting conversations about neurodiversity and mental health in the sport. So it just felt like a really natural thing to have her on to talk about this on the podcast. So we talked about our own experiences with ADHD diagnoses. We talked about some of our favorite players and them being open about their own different types of neurodiversity, including Lucy Bronze and Kerstin Casparij. And then we got into this sort of intersection with other mental health things. So of course we talked about Viv Miedema. We just love her too on this pod. And then, of course, right now we cannot talk about mental health in the women's game without also mentioning Matt Beard. So we did talk about that a little bit. So that was towards the end. We get into the mental health of it all. So if it's not good for you to listen to that right now, totally fine. We kept it quite general, and we're really talking about how we are very passionate about making sure that we're checking in on our friends and being there. So hopefully it's something that everybody can find something meaningful out of. I know I took a lot away from that conversation. So thankful that Meg spent the time to have the conversation with me. It's a bit of a long one. We talked for like an hour and 15 minutes, but I think it's worth listening to. I really enjoyed editing it. And so, Meg, thank you again. And I hope all of you enjoy this episode as much as I do. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the pod. Today we have Meg with us, a very dear friend of mine who is joining us all the way from Australia. And today we're going to talk a lot about like neurodiversity and sport. And there was just no one else that I wanted to start this conversation with than Meg. So I'm so excited that you are here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I have absolutely no credentials, no business being here, and yet here I am.
And
So,
yet here we are because I feel the same way and I show up every week. So it's fun. It's just something to do. But should we start with our sort of like origin story?
it's an interesting one. So I think we should get into
I
it.
think it'll work. So Meg and I met, interestingly, I'm from the US, you're from Australia. We met in Switzerland at the Euros. I was there with my dear friend Laura. You were there with your dear friend Kobe. And now we are all very dear friends. And it was a sort of magic situation. We ended up spending basically the whole 10 days that I was there together. It was the loveliest of times, chasing the tournament around the country and just like doing all the things. And it became very apparent very early on that we were both ADHD girlies in our communication styles and the things that we were talking about, the way we were just like jumping around to things. And so this conversation has been something that we've talked a lot about, especially in this sort of era where our elite athletes are starting to talk about these kinds of things. And so I'm just excited to talk about it and really get into it.
I think that the funniest thing is we met, and I met Laura first, obviously, and we
Mhm.
had been there for a little while. She's like, I've got Bridget coming in, and she's an American, a good American, not like one of the bad Americans. And I was like, okay, girl.
Okay,
And I
perfect.
met you for all of 5 seconds, and you were like, I just love Lucy Bronze. And I was like, okay, we're going to get on. We're going to
We'll
be
do
friends.
just fine then. I do.
We will be fine.
Yep. Big Lucy Bronze fan. I think that that sets me up well for European and I guess Australian friends too. Who knew? Also, big Steph Catley fan. So I think that does well for me in a lot of spaces. So,
Who
but I
isn't
think,
a big Jeff Catley fan,
yeah,
honestly? Why could you ever hate that girl?
you couldn't. It would be impossible, I think. So we did mention our star, probably mostly of the podcast, is Lucy Bronze. And so I want to talk about her and the way that she talks about her neurodiversity. And so, I don't know, do you want to start and tell us a little bit about the Lucy Bronze of it all, and then I can
Yeah,
jump in?
let's go for it. So I think there's quite a few times where she's talked about it in the recent media.
Mhm.
And I remember it coming out and no one was surprised. Let's be honest, not a single person had their jaw on the floor. But I think that I was shocked mainly because it's not something people talk about, especially her autism, I think, was a big one as well.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching that and like almost being on the verge of tears though, because I was so proud of her and what that kind of meant, even though it doesn't really feel like it's a big thing when everyone knows. But to kind of stand there, or in her case, sit there and say, no, I have autism and it's a good thing. I'm different. I'm neurodiverse and it helps me. It's good. It's something I'm not shying away from. That's really impactful, I think.
I think so too. I remember one of my first thoughts about it was that it was such a short kind of segment because
Yeah.
I really thought that I just didn't have access in America to like the full thing. And so I was begging my friends to like send me the full thing and they're like, What do you mean the full thing?" And I was like, "Well, I can only see like a 7-minute video." And they were like, "That's all that it is?" And I just remember thinking like, yeah, she says that I just didn't think it was that big of a deal, which has become like a tagline for her, I feel like, post Euros. But for her to just kind of say it and not over explain and not do this like hour-long interview and make it into this like really big thing, but to just be with Alex Scott, who is someone she's very, very close with, also very well known in the soccer media sphere, but just to sit down with her and be like, yeah, I have autism and
Cool.
ADHD.
And this,
And
I
that's it.
think,
And like that's just who I am. That's what makes me exactly who I am. And I just remember thinking like that's so cool that she just like did it. I don't know.
I think that's a big part of the women's
Mhm.
football community, or soccer. Sorry, we're both from countries where we can say football or soccer.
Yeah, we
Well,
say
it's
both on this podcast. Take your pick. I'll say both
um,
throughout. I flip back and
we're
forth.
inclusive. We're inclusive. But no, I think that's a big part of it. It's I'm neurodiverse and
Hmm.
it's I'm, queer, and
Hmm.
it's anything, any big defining thing about you doesn't become your defining
Hmm.
feature
Hmm.
anymore. And that's amazing to see,
Hmm.
because it's like, okay, I have ADHD and tell me about your personality and your favorite player. It's like it doesn't become who you are. It becomes a 7-minute video where you help make other people feel more included. It doesn't become, oh my God, Lucy Bronze is the autistic player. It's like, that's not how I think of her. I
No,
think Lucy Bronze, the GOAT.
right.
Like,
Right. That's it. End of
that's
sentence.
that's where I'm going.
Yeah, to me, what really struck me was the casual nature, like we're saying. Like she just said it and just owned it. And she was like, and what I found so interesting as somebody else, and we'll get into this in a little bit, who was diagnosed like later in life, she wasn't diagnosed with autism officially until like it seems about 3 or 4 years ago in the way that she tells it. She doesn't give like a specific date, but like she's 33 now. So she was like in her late 20s when she was diagnosed officially with autism. But so interesting because her mom is a math teacher and always knew and was able to like help her move through the world in such a positive way, knowing that Lucy's just like a little bit different. Like she just thinks about things differently. And we've always known that. Like we've always joked that like, oh, she's built different. She really is. Like her brain actually works differently than much of the population. And so I just think that's so interesting. And I thought it was really, I don't know if it was in the first interview or if she's talked about it since, where like she earlier on in her career didn't always get along on teams super well because she just thinks about things differently and she can solve the problem quickly and then she'll just like say the answer and everybody's like, Lucy, like you have to give other people like a chance to have their own process and think through it. And for a long time she didn't quite understand that because she's like, well, I know the answer, why am I not just telling you the answer? And although I don't have autism, I do have ADHD. I very much relate to that. Like that's who I was as a kid. Like I could get to the answer quickly and I would just like say it. And my teachers would have to be like, Bridget, you have to give other people a chance because other people need to be able to learn how to get to the answer too. And so I just think that's so interesting that she like didn't need the diagnosis, but also acknowledges that it has been helpful because when you can just go to a coach and say like, hey, actually, part of the reason why I might struggle in this way is because I have these diagnoses. Clearly, I can still be a phenomenal athlete and be the freaking best right back potentially ever. I won't say ever because Emily Fox is in the conversation, but certainly in that conversation for sure. And so to say like, yeah, I am these things and phenomenal soccer player and a great teammate and a leader in all of these teams, right? Like you can be all of the things, and just the visibility of that is so cool.
I 100% agree. I think I've listened to a lot of podcasts and interviews from all sorts of players, but the one that I reflect back on with Lucy is she's talking about how they did, I don't want to get this wrong, but like character testing before the Euros in last time, not this time.
Yeah.
And they did all this stuff where, okay, so do you think logically? Do you think emotionally? Like, what's your process through?
Mhm.
And she was just like, well, obviously I'm logic focused,
Yeah.
and I want, factually, this is what's happening, then this, that's
Mhm.
the way she thinks. But other people think in a completely different way. And we did a lot of that stuff. I was not a soccer player, I was a water polo player. And we did stuff like that. And I think it's very interesting to understand that everyone does think very
Mhm.
differently.
Mhm.
But that's a good thing. Like
Mhm.
it means that every single person on your team brings a different perspective.
Mhm.
And you don't want everyone necessarily to be thinking in the same way,
Mhm.
because yes, it means you're on the same page, but it means you've got no creativity, you've
Mhm.
got no differences. If we had a team of 11 Lucy Bronzes, don't get me wrong, it would be fantastic, but it wouldn't win us the Euros. We
No.
don't need 11 Lucy Bronzes. We need one, and we need an Alessia Russo and a Chloe
Mhm.
Kelly. And,
Mhm.
we need differences in our teams. And I think that she's celebrating her difference.
Mm.
What makes her different? What can she bring to a team situation that
Mhm.
other people aren't bringing?
Right. And I think acknowledging that that can be a strength is really interesting. I did a little bit of research about like ADHD in sport, and I was trying to find some about like autism in sport. There's not a lot out there in the world right now about autism in sport. I think that that will continue to become more visible, and then more studies will be on it. But actually, ADHD is overrepresented in elite sport, and they credit a lot of that to the ability to hyper focus. This is something that Lucy has talked about a lot, where she's like, I can just focus and compartmentalize everything else out and focus on the soccer in a way that a lot of other people can't. And so some of these studies are noticing that like these traits can be really, really beneficial to you in your sport. List of female athletes who have been open about their ADHD diagnoses include Simone Biles, Michelle Carter, Alyssa Seeley, Molly Seidel, Brittany Griner, all of whom are Olympic athletes, most of whom, if not all of whom, have medaled. And then Lucy Bronze. And the other person I want to talk about is Kerstin Casparij, because she, when she first came on Snapchat of all places, she mentioned something just like very briefly about, she was like, oh, that's because of my ADHD, talking about like decorating her house or something. Like it was something super random, and she just like dropped it in. And then she got like hundreds of replies to that story, and people were like, oh my gosh, you have ADHD, I have ADHD, that's so crazy, like I didn't realize that you could be an elite athlete with ADHD, like, and we're asking her so many questions about it that she ended up doing an entire Q&A that lasted like a week, where she was just answering people's questions about her experience with the ADHD and how that affects her in sport. And one of the things that I found really interesting was like a couple weeks after that, she came back on Snapchat and she was like, hey guys, like we talked a lot about my ADHD diagnosis, last week or whatever, and we had the Q&A, but one of the things that I've really been struggling with is my ability to sleep, because oftentimes people who have ADHD have like the inability to like shut off their brain when they're trying to sleep, and so falling asleep can be really difficult. And she was like, do any of you have any great tips or tricks that you do that could be really helpful, because I'm in a pattern where I'm really having trouble sleeping. And so she had created this community where not only was she like offering us advice of how she's navigated it and how she's gotten to where she's at, but also asking for advice in return, which I thought was so interesting, to have this sort of like open dialogue of like, yes, there are a lot of ways in which we can channel some of the like strengths of ADHD, the hyperfocus and the ability to lock away pain and these kinds of things. There's research about people with ADHD having higher pain tolerances, these kinds of things. But also, there are some things that are really difficult, like Lucy talking about trying to relate to teammates, and Kerstin talking about trying to sleep at night, right? These kinds of things that certainly impact our elite athletes as well. And so I thought that was so interesting and such a vulnerable thing for somebody to do who's like playing for the Netherlands, playing at Man City. Like doing all of these incredible things, and for her to be like, guys, I can't sleep. Can you help me? Like, felt, I don't know, I just really, really respected it and have become like an even bigger fan of hers since that conversation. Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting.
I think it's so important. I think Kirsten is, along with a lot of women in this community, are changing what a role model is. I think that for so long, and the way we look at even men's sport is we put these like players on a pedestal, and then we go, okay, like we're going to follow this person to
Mhm.
a T.
Mhm.
And I want to be that person. And we see 5% of their life. We see them on the field, we see them dressed up for things, and then every now and then we'll see them in a very structured interview where they've had their questions pre-planned. And you go, cool, that's perfect. That's great. Like
Mhm.
that person that you're trying to be
Mhm.
is cool. That's a great person to try and be, except for you don't know their full story. And that means that we as individuals are trying to live up to 5% of perfection, of very structured perfection. And that's just not what humans are. And that's not what it looks like realistically. I think that's why I love Snapchat so much. And the Australians are big on it. We've got Macca doing like,
Yeah.
she's got her Snapheads, and so does Alana Kennedy and
Mhm.
Caitlin Ford and Katie McCabe, which it's been amazing. Katie is an honorary Australian at this point.
Right.
I've adopted her. But no,
In the same way that we've adopted Sam Kerr. She doesn't want it, but we're doing it anyways.
I
Sorry.
will have her back for the Asia Cup, please. But yeah,
Fine,
you
you
can
can
have
have
her for a little while.
her.
You can have her while she's injured.
Well, she's back, so we'll take her. She's already scoring goals. Like, it's fine. We'll keep her for now.
But yeah, I think it's been so cool to see the players be more vulnerable, because
Mhm.
that is human nature. And I think that is the definition of what a role model should be. I
Mhm.
think we should be teaching young people how to ask for help. We should be teaching young people that life isn't going to be perfect and that you're going to have struggles, but it's okay to reach out when you are struggling with something like not being able to sleep. And it's okay to be honest about it as well. I can't sleep because of my ADHD. What
Mhm.
have some people with ADHD also done? Like, it's very important to have that sort of communication and for it to flow both ways, because inadvertently, Kirsten, through this process, is helping herself, but is helping hundreds of other people
Mhm.
probably.
Mhm.
So, and even if she's just helping one other person, that's insane.
Yeah,
That's
like
what
that.
that's
Yeah,
what it's about. Use your
right,
platform.
exactly. And I think what's also interesting is Lucy has talked a lot about how now, and I'm sure this has changed post Euros since the whole thing came out about the broken leg. Like, I bet people are talking to her about that more, but she said when fans see her and approach her, the thing that they're talking to her about is her ADHD and autism diagnosis, not in a like, oh, you have autism, in a like, I also have autism. I think I'm so thankful that you shared about it because it has allowed me to share with my friends, or even other players have reached out to her and said, like, thank you so much for being vulnerable. It encouraged me to like share with my teammates or share with whoever I needed to in my life to make myself just be able to move through the world more easily. Like, having people know that about you, not that it changes the way that they think about you, but it explains so much about you. In, I think, a similar way to like personality tests and things like that. Like, the Enneagram was really big for a while here, and my friends and I got super into it. And it just helps you understand like what people's motivations are and why they're doing things, helps you relate to them in different ways, in the same way that knowing about like a neurodiversity could help you understand someone better and know how to better relate to them as a teammate, both on and off the field, right? I think that's
100%.
so important.
I think that it's really cool to see people embracing who they are in
Mhm.
any way, shape, or form. But
Mhm.
I think this one really hits close to home for both of us.
Mhm.
And it's cool to see people being like, yeah, no, I'm different. And that difference actually makes us similar. That feels like it doesn't work. It's a bit of an oxymoron, but
Right.
it our differences are, because we all are different, mean that we are all the same,
Right.
which doesn't really make a lot of
Yeah.
sense, but it's really cool. And I love that she had that confidence to
Mhm.
sit up there and be like, yes. And my favorite quote from the whole situation is she called
Mhm.
it her superpower,
Yeah.
which was really cool. I think it's something that young people, like young kids, will also be like,
Mhm.
superpower, that's so cool. But
Right.
it is, in some ways, it is a superpower power. There are certain benefits to it
Mhm.
that we were discussing before about how you
Mhm.
can really like lock in on something. But it means that you can just sit and watch heaps of footage and you can really nitpick something. And that can come with its ups and its downs. But I'm really glad that Lucy is talking about the positives of it, because I think for so long, the media, teachers, life in general have kind of gone, oh, here's all the horrible things, and you don't want your kids to have ADHD, and stop feeding them this because it'll give them ADHD, the same way we talk about cancer, where it's like, where it's like, don't, and it's not like that at all. You can't stop it. It's something
Right.
that is just part of people, and we should be embracing the good aspects of it.
For sure. I think it's really interesting the way that you're talking about how it's been perceived in like culture and media forever. And I think I'm not exactly sure what your experience was with diagnosis, but like I wasn't diagnosed until I was 25. And interestingly, some of the common symptoms in girls are very, very different than the common symptoms in boys. And even the onset of symptoms is very different. Boys tend to have it in childhood. Girls, the symptoms don't tend to be stronger. Again, this is not always going to be the case, but start to come around puberty time. So the average age, last time I could find a statistic on it, and it is a little bit outdated, but the average age of diagnosis for girls was 17, and the average age of diagnosis for boys was like 7. Right? Like those are completely different times in life. And so I think that's really interesting. And a lot of the ways that we think about ADHD are very much associated with the way that the symptoms present in young boys when we think about the kid who can't sit still and is always getting out of their seat and doing all of these things. And interestingly, there's been a lot of gendered conditioning around that in culture where little girls they understand that those aren't acceptable things. And so they've been conditioned not to do them. And so then symptoms tend to come out in different ways. So some of the sort of like hyperactivity symptoms that the research is showing is like hyper talkativeness, high arousal, fidgeting, which includes like playing with your hair, right? Like all of these things that we just associate with normal, like little girl behavior. Maybe it is, or maybe if we're seeing multiple of these things kind of together, they might be indicators. Flighty thoughts, internal restlessness, like not being able to stop thinking about something, these sorts of things, emotional reactivity, right? If these symptoms are also onsetting at the same time as puberty, we have the menstrual cycle coming in. A lot of it is dismissed as just the sort of like hormonal situation that's happening. As far as the like inattention kind of symptoms, forgetfulness, lower arousal, internalizing things, daydreaming, disorganization, and then the set of symptoms related to like impulsivity is not the same as the little boy who just like gets up out of his seat and walks away, as we would stereotypically think about these things. But it's more of like a tendency to interrupt when you're talking to people, saying whatever comes to mind, acting on these random impulses, suddenly changing directions in your life and deciding, like, I don't want any of this anymore. I'm doing something different. Obviously, absolutely none of those ones that I can relate to in any way at all. And it's just been interesting as I've done more research on ADHD, both when I was diagnosed and for this. Like, I'm also learning so much more about myself, which I think is really cool because I got in trouble as a kid all the time because interrupted everybody, but I would just like have a thought and I like had to say it. Right. And I think I got in trouble for it and like you need to just be able to wait your turn. And now understanding more about myself, I'm like, I hear you. And yes, that is the way a conversation works. Absolutely. And I wasn't able to, like I couldn't. And that's something that still as an adult, I'm like actively working on because I get excited and I just want to like say the thing. I don't know what your experience with any of that kind of thing is or if any of that rings true for you.
Yeah, I think that I was sitting there going, wow, are we the same person? I knew we were going to be friends from the get-go, but no,
Right.
I got diagnosed when I was 19, so just
Okay.
a little off the average, but not super, super far. It was an accident actually. It wasn't
Okay.
even meant to happen. I was talking to my therapist and we were just talking about things going on in my life at the time.
Mhm.
And and I don't condone this, but I made a joke about something, not a very poor tasted joke, being like, oh, that's probably just my autism. Because I was reacting to, at the time, my sock felt weird in my shoe. And I was like, I'm just going to fix this real quick. And she was like, Meg, you're not autistic. And I was like, I just kind of always had like a feeling because I react to things like that very differently. I have to fix it. I
That,
can't sit
that
here.
we will not be having wrinkles in our socks.
No,
Absolutely.
I will not be sitting here having a conversation with you. She was like, no, that's an indicator of ADHD. You've got ADHD. And I was like, how do you know that? What? She's like, well, I've known you for a year now. It's the way you think about things. And I was like, what? And she goes, Meg, did you know it's not normal that you can think about 7 different things at once? And I was like, no. She was like, yeah, okay. So imagine it like you've got a Google screen open. Most people have one tab, maybe two, one on the back burner. She's like, you don't have tabs open. You have multiple screens
Mm,
and they're all going on at once. And she was like, and that is the way you're seeing the world. And at different times, it's overwhelming you.
mhm,
Um, and I think that moment where she started to talk about it and we did way more research and understanding into what that feeling was.
mm,
And I think the crossover between, because it is being neurodiverse, but the crossover between autism and ADHD gets really wrinkled as well because people go, things like having a problem with your sock isn't necessarily autism. It
mm,
is ADHD. Your brain goes, I can think about that and I'm stuck now thinking about that. I'm hyper focusing on that. Let me fix it. So I think that just by accident, I ended up learning a lot about
mhm,
myself.
mhm,
Um, and I think that I was experiencing at the time a lot of negativity and the downside of ADHD,
mhm,
where, yeah, you can hyper focus and use all 7 tabs of your brain to really unpick a situation, really spiral in a situation. And that's not positive. And that is when ADHD needs to be looked
mhm,
at and helped. But it also means I can do crazy cool things
mhm.
and lock in and have a conversation with you and talk about 6 different things to do with football at one time and we can go between. And I think meeting other ADHD people, and now that the conversation is way more open, and I love
Mhm.
talking about it because it means that other people might feel more confident talking about it. But yeah, I think it is really cool when you meet another person and you're able to go from topic to topic, back to the topic, left, right, forward, straight, backwards, in circles, and
Mhm,
you
mhm.
feel like you're being seen.
Yeah, with my ADHD diagnosis, I had made a friend. I was working at a restaurant. I had made a friend named Chandler, and she has pretty severe ADHD. She would not care that I've said that. She's like us. She talks about it all the
Oblivious.
time. It's just like, we know, we got that. But I had never had like a really close friend who I knew that had ADHD just growing up. I don't think any of my friends did. And then the more I was like hanging out with her and talking to her, and I was like, we're really doing this the same way. And you're talking about how you have ADHD, and I've never been diagnosed. I've never been tested. No one has even considered the fact that maybe I do have ADHD because I, my ADHD, I also, when I was diagnosed with ADHD, I was also diagnosed with anxiety. And I found out that, and I don't know if you've ever taken this test, but that I'm a highly sensitive person, which is potentially just the like psychology defin it's not the same as an empath, but it's very, very similar. There are a lot of overlapping things. And it's not technically like a diagnosis. You don't treat it, but it's something that I also have. And this overlap between like the ADHD, anxiety, and being a highly sensitive person makes me have many similar traits to somebody who's on the autism spectrum for sure. I actually asked my psychiatrist after she told me that I had ADHD and anxiety, and I was like, also, are we worried that I might not, I mean, again, worried's not the right word, but I'm like, are we thinking about the fact that I might be autistic? And she like laughed at me, which is fine. She was like, I do not think that you have autism. Like, if you really, really strongly believe that you do, like, we can do the test for it. But she's like, the things that you have associated with potentially having autism are actually things that are your ADHD. And my ADHD, especially in sport, manifested as this perfectionism and inability to control my emotions, which again is a big overlap with somebody has like ASD. And so I guess I can talk a little bit about that because I do think that having these female athletes talk about these things are really, really important because I think that I am somebody who, if I was diagnosed earlier on, it would have really changed the way that I interacted with my sport. I grew up playing tennis, which is a very individual sport. So there is no sort of like team dynamic. The way that I was relating to other people through tennis was coaches. And I could not have any coach other than my mother. My mother is also a fantastic tennis coach. That's what she does for a living. So I am very lucky in that sense. She's like the best ever, in my opinion. But any other coach that I had, like I needed to know the full rationale. Why are we doing this? What is it going to do for me? What's the end goal? Like I had so many questions because I just needed to know. And then now, as I think back to how I was feeling when I was playing tennis, I was constantly overstimulated and I didn't know what to do with it. And so I would get so like emotionally dysregulated and so overstimulated. And then I would just completely shut down. Like I would stop trying. I would intentionally lose matches because I couldn't be in that state anymore. And I just had to go. And the thing about tennis is it is not timed. It is you have to play the match until it's done. And so then I would just end the match as quickly as possible, which would often include me losing. And it wasn't on purpose, but it also was. Like it was something that I couldn't not do. I didn't want to be doing it, but I couldn't do anything else. And so I do think that if we had understood that I think about the world differently and that I am getting like emotionally dysregulated. It was very obvious that I was emotionally dysregulated, but it wasn't necessarily obvious why, and that we maybe could have done something about it, and that could have had me interact with the sport differently. Instead, I just grew to resent it. I never play tennis anymore. I'm not interested because I associate it with sort of that like sort of emotional dysregulation, overstimulation kind of thing, which isn't fair to the sport. It's a great sport. People love it. So I don't know what your experience with being, an undiagnosed child trying to participate in sport. Like, do you see ways that it was affecting you and you maybe didn't realize that's what it was?
Yeah, definitely. I think you touched on this before, but women learn to what's called mask.
Mm,
And we mask our behaviors because we know that they're not socially acceptable.
mhm.
So we know, well, not all of us, obviously, but I knew that as a kid, if I was to throw myself on the ground and scream, my mom wasn't going to come over and like it wasn't going to help my situation.
Right.
So why do it? I know that being those boys who, just physically couldn't sit still, that wasn't going to help my case. That wasn't going to get me any attention. So
Mhm,
you just learn to, what's socially acceptable, what's not,
mhm,
hold it in. Hold
mhm,
it in, deal with it yourself. Just be uncomfortable, but don't
mhm,
let anyone else know that you're uncomfortable. And I think that was a feeling that I just took through my whole life. Just be uncomfortable.
mhm,
Just don't tell anyone that you're
mhm,
uncomfortable with what's
mhm,
going on. Don't show that you're overstimulated.
mhm,
Don't let these bits of you kind of come out. And I think you were saying this before, don't interrupt. Like you're sitting here in a conversation normally with a non-neurodiverse person. You're like, okay, cool. Well, I've already spoken 3 times and they've spoken once. So I'm going to wait until they've spoken again about something else. And then I'm going to butt in and I'm going to say this thing. Oh shit, I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh no. Okay. Wait, now I've got to find something new to say. And it's overwhelming.
And now you
It's,
haven't, it's so roaming, and you haven't listened to anything they've been saying in that whole time period, and they've gone on, and then they're like, "Are you even listening to me?" And it's like, and
yes.
then it's like one more thing, and you're like,
Yeah.
I'm really trying to listen to you. I really am.
It's the hardest thing is like I in all those situations being like I am trying. I
Mm-hmm.
am trying my best constantly. Can't you see that I'm trying? But also don't realize I'm trying because I don't want you to realize I'm different.
Absolutely not.
And so it's a hard
Mm-hmm.
situation to be in, to
Mm-hmm.
feel like in most social situations, you're putting in more effort. You
Mm-hmm.
want them to see the effort, but at the same time, you don't want them to realize that you're putting in that much effort because you look crazy. So I think, yeah, like I was saying before, finding other neurodiverse people was
Mm-hmm.
was very eye-opening to me because I get in a conversation with you and I'm like, I'm just gonna say whatever I want whenever I feel like it, and
Right.
she's gonna do the same, and we're gonna have a glorious time.
And we'll get wherever we get. The conversation will take us where it needs to go.
But yeah, I think that was 100% the situation of why I didn't get diagnosed until so late because I was unfortunately really good at just covering what was happening. And I think at the same time, I'm not a super hyperactive
Mm-hmm.
external person. It's mostly internal for me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't sit and bounce my leg. I don't
Mm-hmm.
need to be moving all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I love to move. Yes, I love to play sports. I grew up very sporty. So maybe if we took those things away, maybe I would be a little hyperactive. Who knows? But I think, yeah, for the most part, it was that sort of internal battle I was fighting. I could definitely see it with my sport. I loved to lock in. I love to know why we're doing a drill, but I also was in my brain going, this connects with this, and we do that because then I can do this later.
Mm-hmm.
If I learn to, defend this person, that means when I'm in attack, I can do this. And I think that my brain sort of just loved making those pathways, which other kids, I didn't see them doing that or wanting to do that. And that just made me different. I think it makes me a really good coach now. I
Mm,
coach
I'm sure
now,
it
and
does.
for those kids who enjoy that, I'm now someone who just connects it. And I'm like, okay, we're doing this and tell me why we're doing it. I try and make them think through the steps because I think it did really genuinely help me piece things together quickly. And also
Mm,
in a situation where you can't have your coach telling you what to do every 2 seconds, you have to be able to think for yourself. So can we
right.
teach kids how to make those connections? So yeah, I do think, like Liz Bron said, it can be my superpower at different times.
Mm-hmm.
But I think having a name to it and understanding why I do something really changed my perspective.
Mm,
Like I was always very like, this is me, that's okay. I might do things that other people don't do, but I was just like, oh, but why am I like this?
mm,
Why can I just not chill out? Why can I not just think about one thing? The one thing I genuinely really want to be able to do, think about nothing. I had a friend in my class growing up and he would just zone out, but he's not daydreaming. He's like, no, I'm just thinking about nothing. I'm chilling. I was like, I have never known a moment of no thoughts in my brain.
no.
Yeah.
No, I mean I agree. When I was first diagnosed, it was right at the start of when I was working on my dissertation in my PhD program, and I started taking medication, and I will never forget the first day. They put me on Adderall originally, and I remember the first day I like sat down, I like took the meds, drove to campus, I like sat down and I started like working on something, and then I just like stopped. And I was like looking around because for the first time in my whole life, my brain was like quieter.
Doesn't it feel like you're also less exhausted?
And I
Um,
texted my
yeah,
family and I said, "Is this what it feels like?"
yeah,
Like all the time. Ended up Adderall didn't work for me. The stimulant was too much and it spiked my anxiety, and then I went on a different medication that just made me too tired. Like it quieted me so much that I just wanted to take a nap all the time. And I was in the process of working on my PhD, and so I just didn't have time to like mess with the meds and figure out what was going to work. So I'm still currently unmedicated, which I am not an advocate
really.
for. Yeah, I kind of raw dog the world in a way that I'm not sure is super great or super healthy. That's on my list of things to do is I'm gonna start readdressing that and see. I actually think I'm somebody who might benefit from starting with like maybe addressing the anxiety of it all and then deciding what then makes sense for me to do. Like if I'm controlling the anxiety better, then would Adderall actually be really helpful for me? And would that be an appropriate med if we're managing the anxiety right? I just didn't have the time or frankly the money because of the type
Yeah.
of health system we have in the United States to figure that out. So that's like an active thing that I'm still trying to decide what makes sense for me. But I just remember the first day I took that Adderall and I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what in the world?
It's such a feeling of being like, I can't think of another word other than zen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not like you're on drug. Well, you are on drugs, but
Well,
not like you're on drugs. Um, like I'm tripping or anything. It's
mm-hmm.
that feeling of just like, you know what? Everything might calm down and
Mm-hmm.
everything seems a little bit more possible because you don't have a thousand things at once.
Mm-hmm.
One thing seems very achievable. I find that with assignments and things where I'm just like, I don't even know where to start. Oh, okay, let's just start here. It
Mm-hmm.
makes things feel like they can be possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to just start at the start. But I do think you've touched on a really interesting point, and I am going to segue us into another conversation. But I think ADHD and other mental health conditions really end up in this really complicated web that you don't even know where to start, where it ends, where to pull, where to leave, because it is so interconnected with anxiety for sure. And it's hard to know, is my anxiety only because of my ADHD? Am I anxious and ADHD? Am I ADHD and the ability to think of so many things is making me anxious because I'm spiraling? Am I depressed and ADHD, or is my ADHD making me depressed? Such a chicken egg situation.
Yeah, like is one the symptom of another? Are they both independent? Are they both just teaming up and making things all, like where do you even start? And I think in the US they're really quick to just like medicate ADHD and be like, okay, problem solved.
Yeah, I know people who were even originally diagnosed bipolar, and then it's actually ADHD that's doing it, and their moods are changing so much because of just simply what is their brain hyperfixating on? Is it positive or is it negative? And then people are going, okay, well, that's mania versus depression. Not really. That's not actually genuinely what's happening here, but we're not getting to the core of the problem. So if we bring it back to football, I think the person I really love to talk about at any given point in time is Vivianne Miedema. She's maybe changed my life more than any other football player. And look, it's a long journey, but I think as an ADHD person, as well as everybody else, every other human in the world really deserves to take that sort of step to understanding your brain, but also looking after it. I think a lot of people try and understand it by yelling at your brain. Why am I like this? Why do I do this to myself? Why can't I be normal? Well, newsflash, there's no such thing as normal.
That doesn't even exist to begin with.
We've all got things. We're all different. And I think Viv talks a lot about taking time for yourself, about not playing through injury, about mental health being a big factor in sport, but in looking after yourself, and taking time away isn't weakness, it's a strength. And I think that perspective is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first game of last season when City played Arsenal at the Emirates. That was her first game for City, and then she had to come back and play at her former team's home ground in front of like all of these thousands of people, tens of thousands of people. And she had talked before about how she was like, oh yeah, like I am nervous, but she was kind of making jokes about it. She's like, oh, of course, that's what, what it's got to be. It has to be this way kind of thing. But I could tell that there was like a bit more to it, especially because she'd been so vocal for the past multiple years about her own mental health situation. And so I was interested to see what she was going to say. And then afterwards, the post that she made on Instagram really focused on her anxiety. And did I remember, was it a draw? Did they tie?
I think now
I
you're
don't
putting
remember.
me on spot.
Anyways,
I think they lost. I just remember the game, crying my eyes out, and then the picture of Viv and Beth, and they both scored, I think.
Yeah, I think it ended up a tie. I think they both scored, but it was like a 2-2 tie or something. Whatever it is. She was like, I've never been so anxious for a game in my life. And just being vulnerable about that and like just naming it and saying like it's okay. And to know that that's the most anxious she's ever been. She's out there with new teammates, new team, but in a place that feels so familiar, but being on the outside of it. We all know that the way that she left Arsenal was less than ideal for her specifically. And I think for the team as well. I think that was a sort of management level decision outside of the team. And it I don't think was great for many of the players. But for her to admit that she was as anxious as she was and then come out and play a great game. Like was she the best Viv Miedema that we've ever seen? No, probably not. But still she was able to like come and perform and do her job and the things, and just seeing someone be honest about that, I think is so empowering to the rest of us. Like I'm never going to be playing a soccer game in front of 65,000 people. Like that's just never going to be it. That's not what I'm going to be anxious about. But I can be anxious about giving a presentation or doing something like that, and acknowledging that, yeah, like I can be anxious and that is okay. And I can still go do my job. Like both things can be true at the same time. And I think just the more that we're talking about these things, because I think a lot of what Viv says is like, even acknowledging it is important. We have to start there. Just name what's happening. And I think that she does such a good job of that and is such a strong advocate, not through just the initiatives that she then takes on as her like passion projects, but just in the way that she lives her own life, in the way that she shows up on social media and all of those things, interviews that she does, all of that.
100%. And I think that goes back to the idea that we are talking about before of role models.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good role model. That's someone being perfect, not a good role model.
Mm-hmm.
Someone being imperfect and honest about it, very important. And I think the difference for Viv for me is that she knows the distinction between being anxious and doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You can be scared, you can be really nervous and for something the way she was for that game and do it anyway and do it well. The same way you can be really anxious for a presentation and do it anyway and do it well. You can do things whilst having those intense emotions. But then on the flip side, she also goes, I'm not in a mentally good headspace right now. I'm taking time to myself. She knows the difference of being very anxious and that being okay and understanding where it's coming from and knowing she's going to go out there and be okay versus that I am not healthy. I need time to myself and I don't have to give anyone an explanation. I don't owe anyone anything. If I'm not well mentally, the same way I'm not well if I've broken my knee, then I get time off. I deserve that. That is being an athlete. But that's being a human. That's the same as if in your workplace, if you're not okay mentally, you don't have to go and be completing things at 100%. That's not realistic. And I think that's what she taught me.
Yeah, I think she does this such a good job of acknowledging that we need to work to have this sort of like baseline healthy mental place that we can come back to. Understand that it's going to fluctuate and some days are going to be better and some days are going to be worse. But if we have taken care of ourselves in such a way that we're able to get back to this baseline in a relatively appropriate amount of time or whatever, then you know that you're okay and you can continue. But if you have been far off of this baseline for a long enough period, then it's time to acknowledge that, like, I need to step away to get myself back to where I need to be before I can then continue this, right? And I think she does it in the big moments and the smaller moments in ways that are really, really impactful. And she's so articulate about it. And I'm like, English isn't even your first language. Like, I'm not this articulate about it. And I've been speaking English my whole life. English isn't even your first language, and you can articulate it in ways that I think are so important and so impactful. And so, yeah, I just think she's so important, and she'll leave, not to say that she's going anywhere anytime soon, but the legacy that she's leaving on the field is obviously incredible. The Netherlands posted about her today. She's had 127 caps, 100 goals, like insane. She's insane in the WSL as well with all of her stats and all of that. And so it's just, she'll leave that. But I would argue the more important legacy that she's leaving is this space in Europe for this mental health kind of appreciation. It's in the NWSL, they're doing a much better job of this as well. There have been multiple players over the past couple of seasons who have taken mental health breaks that I think are really impressive and incredible. But I think Viv really is one of those players who's just like leading the charge. And I'm so thankful that not only younger generations have a role model like this, but like so do we. Like I can take so many things from her into my own life that is so vastly different from hers. Like I'm never gonna have her situation, but there will be aspects of my life that I can compare to aspects of hers that are relevant.
And I think she also does a really good job at saying it is individual. Like it is so different. The thing that sticks out for me is from the step by step documentary with Beth and Viv is when Viv did hers, Beth had received really bad news the night before about her mum and Viv played anyway. And Viv's first thought when she went down was, I'm not going to be able to drive Beth home, which is crazy and shows their love, obviously, but at the same time goes, Viv wasn't in the right headspace to be playing a game. She was up late. She had things going on in her brain that weren't football. That's when you get injured. And I think Viv speaking about that's really important because, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be letting players go out on the field like that. Same way as someone's got a niggle in their brain, the same way you can have a niggle in your ankle. And I think that's really important. It's interesting though, because every player plays differently. Someone like Ella Toon, her talking about her dad and then going to training the next day, look, I don't know her situation. Maybe that's what she needed. She needed not a distraction, but she needed to focus on something she was good at. But I think having as a community way more awareness and as individual players, but current players to be hearing Viv and seeing how she's dealing with something might inspire them to be like, okay, what works for me?
And I think the perfect example of that, and I was so happy that they did this as a federation. The FA postponed the Liverpool Aston Villa game over the weekend because of the passing of Matt Beard, because of the impact that he had had on Liverpool and the game more broadly, just acknowledging that like the Liverpool girls cannot go out and play a game right now. Like that is an absolutely unrealistic expectation for us to have. And Rachel Daly and Millie Bright dedicated a whole episode to Matt Beard this week on The Rest is Football, Daily Brightness. And I thought that was so interesting because Millie was like, I never played for him, but everyone knew him and we were all heavy playing in our games over the weekend. And everyone I've spoken to has felt the same way. Like he was such an impactful person on the game that even if you didn't directly play for him, you knew him, he knew you. He would come up to Millie after games and be like, "Oh, Millie, how are you getting on? How's your knee? How's this? How's that?" Like checking in on her life just because that's who he was. And so I thought we're learning things. Like that's what postponing that game indicated to me. Like we're learning that the mental health and the emotional health of the players is important and we need to be making that a priority. And this random third week game is not more important than allowing time, yes, for honoring him, but allowing space for the girls to do whatever they need to do in this time and not expect them to show up and play a soccer game.
And I think absolutely that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
And the run on effect of communities accepting that,
Mm-hmm.
we don't know where this road's going to go. If we can learn to communicate how we're feeling and express that, I think emotional intelligence, but emotional literacy
Mm-hmm.
is super important. Like maybe one of the most important things. If you don't have the words to name what's in your
Mm-hmm.
chest, you're never going to be able to express it and then to feel understood. And if you can't feel understood, then you feel isolated. And if you feel isolated, that's where it gets dark. So I think that as a community, if we can start being like, okay, this isn't okay.
Mm-hmm.
We need to do something different. And it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to have to make other arrangements. It's okay for us to feel this loss deeply. That shows fans to do the same. That shows the players to do the same. That shows the fans to do the same. That shows all the young boys wearing the girls' t-shirts that I love and their jerseys to do the same. And maybe that means that when England lose a game 15 years in the future, maybe we'll have less domestic violence. Like that's a massive jump to make. I know that. But these sorts of community, big, impactful things lead to other impactful changes that we can't even connect.
And I think, I mean, I don't have this experience in the US, but I mean, I guess with American football, I don't know the same kind of stats about the domestic violence. I know that all of those exist in the UK, but when something is such a part of culture, it's such an important place to be talking about these things, right? Like this is ingrained in everything that we're doing. And there was a really impactful advertisement that they did, and now I don't remember who posted it. Was it Brighton, Bristol City? I think I have them conflated in my head. It's the same thing. It was for the men's well, I think the club just as a whole, it wasn't like a women's one, but it was about these two friends who like went to a football game together, and one of the friends was in a really, really bad place, and they were like playing his like internal monologue versus like what was going on at the game and all the things. And then at the end, the friend was like, had asked him a couple of times throughout, like, "Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure what's going on? Like, are you sure?" And the guy was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm good, fine, whatever. Let's just watch the game," kind of thing. And then at the end, it looks like they're gonna just like go their separate ways, and then the guy's like, "Hey," the friend is like, "You know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Like something seems off. Are you sure you're okay? Because something seems different." And then finally the friend like does break down and tells him like, "Yeah, there, I'm in a spot." And I just thought it was so beautifully done. And for this to be done like in the footballing environment is so important to like the culture of England, and the UK more broadly as well, I guess. But I thought that was really powerful, and I would love to see like more things like that and more of these initiatives because as important as it is to have these individual players talking about these things, like those platforms are only ever going to go so far. But having like the bigger clubs posting about it and all of these things in a an it was like a 2 minute ad. Like clearly they spent money making this. Like there was investment. It wasn't just like a thrown together, like typed in the notes app and like thrown up like mental health is important kind of thing. It was like a real way that you can recognize these things in your friends and gives you an avenue to talk to them about it. And even if it's just like, did you guys see that ad that they put out the other day? Like, what'd you guys think of that kind of thing? It opens up the conversation to allow us to talk about it.
Yeah, we have one in Australia, so not soccer, but it's these two middle-aged men
Hmm.
at a game, and one of them is super excited, wearing like fully decked out in the gear, screaming his lungs
Hmm.
out, and the other one doesn't really want to be there. And then they go to like multiple games throughout this 2 minute advertisement, and on the last one, it's the super excited guy who isn't there,
Hmm.
and it's about suicide.
Hmm.
And I think that message, and that was played through heaps of sport advertising. And
Hmm.
I think that message was super important of,
Hmm.
yeah, your happiest friend, your
Hmm.
most dedicated friend, the person who you feel like you are the less worried about could be the person that's hurting the most. And those conversations need to be happening.
Hmm.
And I think as women, we start those conversations a lot easier. We're more open about them
Hmm.
when push comes to shove, because I think in some ways we have to be. We feel like we have to have a community around us, and it's really important because we know what happens when we don't. And so to have that messaging for the men, especially
Hmm.
during big sporting season in Australia, that was really cool. And
Hmm.
I'm excited to see more of that
Hmm.
initiative,
Hmm.
more of that stuff, just like we were saying, because, yeah, we can't get this advertising out to people by putting it on Instagram, putting it on billboards, being like, "Are you okay?" People go, "Yeah, I'm fine," and keep moving on.
Right.
But when we put it in places where they can't ignore it, in their entertainment, in the platforms they love to support, like football, that's when we
Hmm.
see the community change.
Hmm. And I just think it's so important that people are investing in it and we're taking the time to, and I'm an advocate for this, and maybe this is a bit aggressive, but like shoving it in people's face. Like I would way rather that and have 90% of the people be annoyed, but it actually helped 10% of the population. I would way rather that, than us leave the 10% who need the help and need an inroad and are looking for a way to initiate this conversation and just don't know how. And so
I
I
think
just,
that if you are getting annoyed by it, you need to take a reflection on yourself, because it's not taking away from your life to have more information on your hands.
I
Like,
absolutely agree, but I'm willing to let, like, if you, there's always going to be a portion of the population that's going to be annoyed, and that's fine. You can sit there and be annoyed. I actually don't care at all. That's my opinion on the matter. I think it's just way too important to let something like that affect any of it because I do think that we're starting to see change, and I do think that as we continue to do this, it's just going to become more and more, right? Hopefully we'll get a sort of snowball situation. And then the conversation will change as we move forward because there'll be other things that we need to be working harder to bring to light because we've shown the light here.
and I think that's a thing, right? You don't like it because you're uncomfortable. Cool. It's an uncomfortable topic.
Right.
That's, yeah.
That's the
Correct.
whole
You
point.
identified that. It is an
Right.
uncomfortable topic that people are feeling really uncomfortable with. So let's doing this isn't normalizing it. It isn't saying, oh, we're talking, and I think this comes from a lot of the older generation where they're like, oh, everyone these days is depressed. Everyone's sad these days. So are you guys. You just weren't talking about it, and you were in the same, nothing has changed. I mean, obviously times have changed, but we're experiencing the same
Mhm.
things. We're just trying to change the ability for people to talk about them to be better. We're trying to make change that's positive. And
Mhm.
so you're hearing about it more, not because there is more of it, but because we're starting the conversations.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's too important not to. And I think even having conversations like this with friends and just it being a super normal thing for us to talk about, this is not the first time we've had a conversation like this, is just, I think it's so important. And I'm so thankful for people who are willing to put themselves out there on these platforms in which it might not always get received well.
Even the Millie Bright situation,
Mhm.
the backlash that she received for taking time, and look, everyone's allowed to have their opinions and everyone
Of
is
course.
allowed, and I think that's really important. Everybody is allowed to have their opinions on players. Everyone is allowed to have their thoughts. No, you are not allowed to go berate someone because
Mhm.
of their decision with their life. I'm not out here telling you how to live your life. I'm not here. Millie Bright hasn't hurt anyone. She has
Mhm.
not done anything completely wrong. So you
Mhm.
don't get to go
Mhm.
and tear her to shreds because
Mhm.
obviously she's taken that time for herself for a reason.
And I think it's so incredible that she spoke out about it because I do feel like, and this was something that I had to like check myself on. Like, I do feel like she was getting so much criticism at the end of the WSL season last year. Where it's like, it's not the Millie Bright we're used to. She's not, is she like falling off kind of thing? And I didn't even stop to think, like, well, is there something else that's going on here? But it's
Yeah.
like such, and I'm so happy that she has spoken out about it because it has become a check for me now. Before I'm like criticizing a player and wondering, like, well, what's happened to them? Are they falling off? Like, stop for a second. Obviously, I'm not like going online and like posting these things. These are thoughts that I'm having. But it makes me pause for a minute and wonder, like, well, I wonder how they're doing. I wonder how their mental health is. I wonder if they're just exhausted. I wonder if they've picked up a knock, right? Like you had said at the beginning, we know like nothing actually about these people and we act like we know everything.
Mhm.
And these people just give us like nuggets of their life and they don't even need to give us that, right? They owe us nothing.
I
But
think
the
that's such an important message. It is a privilege to get to know what we get to know. It is not a right. And this gets taken out of context so many times in the women's community that we deserve to know what's going on with their injuries, that we deserve to know what's going on with their love lives. I think it is so cool to be invested and be
Mhm.
interested and be
Mhm.
supportive when they share it. But I think digging into someone's lives when they're not sharing it,
Mhm.
that's not okay.
Mhm.
Because it is, yeah, it's a privilege. It's so cool that we get like Beth and Viv, and that we get
Yeah.
to see it. They post
Mhm.
about it, and then we get Katie and Caitlin, and they post on their
Mhm.
Snapchat. We get to see it all the time.
Mhm.
But that sort of situation of like, let me have every single detail about your life because I deserve it because you're a public figure is not how it works. And that's when they start removing themselves. And that's when things that need
Mhm.
to be said aren't being said anymore
Mhm.
because they're too scared to make the wrong choice.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important and just it is easy to fall into this parasocial situation where we feel like we know them because they do make so much of themselves available. And also, that is only the tiniest fraction of who they actually are. And it is a privilege to get everything we have, and we just need to take a beat and say, like, I don't actually know anything that's going on here. And I think what Rachel and Millie are doing with Daily Brightness and the way that they have structured that podcast, I think is fabulous. I think that's really important. Just simple stuff like that, I just think moves the needle and it moves things forward. It starts conversations in ways that are really, really important. And so I'm excited about where things are headed. I feel hopeful that we're moving things in the right direction. And then we have tragedies like what happened with Matt Beard, and it's hard. And it brings us back to needing to acknowledge it again stronger because I was going to say clearly we're not doing enough. depression and suicidal ideation and dying by suicide is so complicated and it's nobody's fault. And it just, people end up in such an impossible place where it truly feels like there is no choice to be made. There's just like an obvious thing to be done. When we're not in that state, it's so easy to say, like, there's so much left for you here, and there are so many people who love you. And so, if we can try to help people before they get to that dark of a place, will be so much better because once they're there, the chances of us being able to like really get to them and make them understand is really low. And so that's why it's so important to have people like Viv and others and Rachel and Millie and so many other people who are talking about like take care of yourself before you get there because once you're there, nobody knows what's going to happen kind of thing.
Yeah, I just, and the unfortunate fact of it is a part of life. It has been, but can we do everything in our power to change that? Can we use our community for the best is the thing that I'm excited for.
Yeah. And I think that we are, and more people are getting involved and more people are doing it. And I just think it's important to get more and more people involved and just check in on your friends, have the conversations. Like it's hard, it's awkward, but it's worth it.
100%.
And the more you do it, the less hard and the less awkward it will be. Wow. I have loved this conversation. It's a heavy one and it's difficult but important, and I'm happy that we are having it. But I do want to segue a little bit into some of the fun quick fire questions that I ask everybody who comes on the pod. So these are,
You're talking to other girls?
yeah,
Rude.
I don't think I was supposed to tell you that.
That's okay. That's all right.
But they are quick fire, so try to answer them quickly. But
have you met me?
I know I didn't answer them. I like tried to do them myself, quick fire, and it didn't work. So we're gonna do our best, okay?
I'm ready.
Okay, first question. Favorite women's soccer moment you've ever witnessed? It can be in person, but it doesn't have to be.
In person, I went to the Euros final, obviously, but that is so boring. My favorite one was when Switzerland got knocked out of the Euros.
Oh,
And they said thank you to the audience with that big poster. I got chills. I got really big chills. The audience also had like a sheet over one side of the, or not a sheet. They had like posters, and it made a mountainscape, like the Alps. And the tagline was "Time to move mountains" for that game. I think just seeing a country come together for their sport, crazy, but for their women, I got body chills.
Oh, I love it so much. That whole tournament, I think, was so special. They were the best hosts, both the team and like the country. It was unreal.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Agreed.
Okay. One player that you'd love to grab coffee with.
Well, you did too, so I'm gonna do too. Okay.
So you're an avid listener. We get it.
I'm addicted. I'm stalking you now. No, my first thought is Steph Curry. We already talked about her this podcast, but I think if I was to get on with someone really well, I think I would feel the most comfortable and the most like relate to Steph Curry. But the one that comes to mind is Lotta Woodbine.
That is such a good shout.
I love that woman with my whole heart. I think that I relate to her more than anyone else. And I think that I just want to be inside her brain for a little bit. I want to give that girl a hug for starters. But after that, I want to talk and I want to help her make the insane changes she wants. I want to help her make policy changes. I want to hear everything she has to say. Yeah, I think that we don't give her enough time of day.
I completely agree. Those are two fabulous shouts. And from the very small fraction of the 2% that I have gathered from them online, I think you guys would be best friends. So there's that.
She just doesn't know it yet.
No, they just haven't had the chance to meet you.
Yeah. I changed their lives pretty much.
Correct. Okay. This is such an interesting question to ask people who I went to the Euros with, but dream match that you'd travel across the world to see.
I already did travel across the world to see Spain, England, which would be my dream match. Probably no. My dream match, I don't want to talk about it because it hurts a little bit, but England versus Australia
Yeah.
always. I think that our semi-final at the World Cup, we have unfinished business. We have unfinished business, and it's not the last page in our story. I think we've got another fight in us, and I know there is one coming up, but I would really love to see one in a major tournament.
Yeah.
The World Cup would be really,
No. Boo.
and the grand final where the
Boo.
US isn't playing because they got grouped.
Boo. No. Fine. I would like it. But the US women's national team is going to be in the finals, so you can have a semifinal of that again, and then you guys can win.
And we win,
And then
and
it
then
could
we
be an
play.
Australia-US final, and then the US will win. 5 stars. 5 stars. Anyways, pardon me. Sorry, I don't know what came over me. That US women's national team pride has been tamped down for too long. Okay, next question. If you could describe the women's soccer community in 3 words, what would they be?
Okay, so obviously I'm an Arsenal fan. We can see that, we know that.
Mhm.
But my genuine answer is whatever the weather. Do you like that? I don't know.
I
I have
love
this.
that, and you're
I
the only
have,
person who has used like the 3 words together, not like 3 individual words.
yeah, I think that I have them tattooed on my body, actually. I would show you, but it's in an awkward spot. But it means the world to me, that phrase of, I think that encapsulates the women's community of it doesn't matter if it's raining, sunny, it doesn't matter if you are anxious, if you are ADHD, if you are queer, it doesn't matter if you are a fan of any team. Well, let's not.
Okay.
Spurs, we don't accept you, but everybody else, no. I'm joking. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of, where you come from,
Mm,
what country you come from, even. Like, look at us two. Come join us in a stadium and let's watch women, talented women, complete their dreams.
yeah.
Let's do it together. Like that's the women's sport community.
I love that so much. We haven't mentioned this. We don't have matching tattoos, but we got tattoos at the same time in Switzerland. So we're forever
Correct.
emblazoned in our skin. Anyway,
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to get the home one with you. I was excluded.
I mean, you could have. We didn't say you couldn't. We also didn't offer you to. So
I was excluded.
it was anyone except Meg, actually.
Yeah,
That's what we
yeah.
decided. Like anyone, stranger on the street? No? Okay, well, still not Meg.
But yeah, no, I did. I've got one here and one here. I got at the same time.
They're so good.
I
Okay,
know.
favorite goal of all time.
Katie McCabe's Olympico in the World Cup when she scored for Ireland for the
Yeah.
first time. That match, well, that World Cup changed football, obviously for me. But I think I saw that, and she does the big like hands out celebration, and I was like, yeah, women can do cool shit.
You know when
Like,
else she did that celebration? When Arsenal won the Champions League.
I was literally thinking that. I was like, yep,
She did. She really
she did.
did.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that one was cool. That one was cool.
Gorgeous. Just unbelievable. She's unbelievable, that woman. Okay, well, that does conclude the quickfire questions, which I should also say, many of which are inspired by our conversations that we had in the car in Switzerland, where we did
While
sort of
you
our
drove
own
on
version.
the left side of the road and
I
none of
know.
us else could.
The
I was
only
like, let
one.
me know if you want to swap. I can't swap, but let me know.
Nobody in this car can help you, but if you want someone else to drive, just let us know.
Yeah. We'll find a solution.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. No, but I am so thankful that you came here today. I'm so thankful that I know you and get to have you as a friend, and that you are such a loyal supporter of the pod, and that you came on and talked about this, which isn't always an easy thing to talk about. I think both of us are quite open about it, so it made a lot of sense for you to be the one to come and talk to me about it. But we will have to have you back at another time where we talk about some of the things like how you got into women's football and women's soccer in Australia and all the things, because there are just so many things that I would love to talk to you about. So thank you so
Anytime.
much.
Thanks so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Yay! Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning into this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I really, really loved that conversation. I'm so thankful for all of the different things that we got to talk about. And I really think for two ADHD girlies, we stayed relatively on task and on track. So that's impressive. If you haven't already, please give us a like, a follow, a subscribe, whatever it is, and keep tuning in because I think it's really fun and I hope you're enjoying it too. Super open to suggestions about what you guys would want to hear me talk about, who you might want to hear me speak with. I'm willing to sort of throw things out there and reach out to people if you find someone interesting that I should talk to. So, yeah, give us a like, follow YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok. Would love to see you guys around. Thanks for tuning in.